All right, welcome to your deep dive for today.
Sounds fun.
Today, we're going to ancient Greece
Ooh, ancient Greece.
to explore the Oracle of Delphi.
Oh, yeah, she's a fascinating one.
I know, it's incredible how much influence she had, right?
Hmm,
Emperors, everyday folks, everyone was captivated by her.
totally.
So we've got 3 articles for this deep dive. Oracle of Delphi. Why was it so important to ancient Greeks?
Okay.
The Oracle of Delphi, the ancient Greek fortune teller,
Mm-hmm.
and the Oracle of Delphi, was she really stoned?
Now, that one sounds really
I
intriguing.
know, right? So our mission today is to discover not only WHO she was, but also WH why she was so important,
Yeah.
how she how she actually gave those prophecies,
Right.
and also how modern science is reshaping what we thought we knew about her.
It's amazing how much we keep learning about the past.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the past is constantly being rewritten.
You got it.
And she wasn't just like some random fortune teller on the street corner.
Oh, absolutely not.
She was a powerful religious figure, deeply embedded in ancient Greek society.
A cornerstone, you could say.
Yeah, cornerstone. And speaking of cornerstones, her location was crucial.
Location, 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 right?
Exactly. Delphi was considered the navel of the world, chosen by Zeus himself.
Oh, wow.
Imagine standing high on Mount Parnassus, surrounded by dramatic cliffs.
I'm picturing it right now.
It feels almost otherworldly, doesn't it? Like a place meant for the gods, not for us mortals.
Totally. Like, you wouldn't expect humans to build a city there.
Right. And the ancient Greeks believed Zeus actually chose this spot.
How so?
Well, the story goes he wanted to find the exact center of the world.
Yeah.
So he released 2 eagles, one from each end of the earth.
All right.
They met right above Delphi,
Oh, wow.
and Zeus dropped a stone called the omphalos to mark the spot.
So, like, the center of the world.
Exactly. And that stone was placed right in the temple of Apollo.
Where the oracle resided?
Yep, right there.
That's incredible.
I know, right? You can see why this site, handpicked by Zeus, would draw people in.
Definitely. It already sounds sacred.
But there's more to Delphi's significance than just the mythology.
Oh, bet.
It was strategically located on a major trade route linking Corinth to northern Greece.
Ah, so smart.
That transformed Delphi into a bustling hub for trade and travel.
I can see merchants and travelers from all over stopping by to hear the oracle's pronouncements.
Oh, definitely. And as Delphi's prominence grew, so did the oracle's fame.
Makes sense.
And here's where things get really interesting. Unlike most cities in ancient Greece, Delphi wasn't controlled by a single city-state.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was overseen by a council representing different Greek city-states.
The council, what was it called?
They called it the Amphictyony.
The Amphictyony. Got it.
And that gave Delphi independence and neutrality that was pretty rare in those times.
Ah, so it wasn't biased towards any one city-state.
Exactly. It was a safe haven, a neutral ground where all Greeks, even foreigners, could seek the oracle's wisdom without fear or favor.
So almost like a Switzerland of the ancient world.
That's a great comparison. A neutral ground for all.
I like it.
So, we've set the stage, right? We've got this sacred site, bustling with activity, politically neutral.
Yeah, I'm hooked.
Now, let's meet the star of the show, the Pythia,
The oracle herself.
the high priestess of Apollo, the god of prophecy, music, and knowledge.
Oh, wow, she's connected to some powerful stuff.
Oh yeah, she was considered Apollo's voice on Earth.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
I know. And to add to the whole mystique, access to the Pythia was super limited.
Oh, really?
According to Plutarch, who was a priest at Delphi himself, she only gave consultations 9 days a year.
9 days out of a whole year.
Yep. Can you imagine the anticipation?
Oh, there must have been lines of people desperate to hear from her.
I bet. The articles describe all these rituals and a strict selection process.
Like what?
Well, they'd test Apollo's approval by dousing a goat in cold water.
A goat. That's interesting.
Yeah. They believed the goat's reaction would reveal if Apollo was okay with the consultation.
Like a divine thumbs up or thumbs down.
Exactly. And all these rituals, this feeling of exclusivity, it just amplified the power and allure of Delphi.
I can see that. It wasn't like you could just walk in and demand a prophecy.
No way. It was this carefully orchestrated experience designed to create a sense of awe and reverence.
And what about the women who served as Pythia? What do we know about them?
Sadly, not much.
Oh, that's a shame.
The historical records are pretty sparse.
Just add.
We know they were chosen from respected Delphian families, and they served for life.
A lifetime devoted to Apollo. Wow.
But their personal stories, their individual lives, that's all lost to history.
It's a shame. I would have loved to hear their perspectives.
Me too. But what we do have are detailed descriptions of the rituals they performed before giving prophecies.
Oh, tell me more.
She would cleanse herself in the Castalian spring, burn laurel leaves and barley meal as offerings to Apollo,
Okay.
and then enter the Adyton, the inner sanctum of the temple.
And that's where things get even more mysterious, right?
Yeah. Right. Ancient sources describe her falling into a trance.
Like possessed.
Well, they describe her voice changing, her words becoming cryptic prophecies, almost like they weren't her own.
Spooky.
It's so fascinating.
So the big question is, was it really divine inspiration or something else?
Exactly. And that's a question that's puzzled people for centuries. So we've got Delphi, this incredible mix of mythology and politics, and of course, all that wealth.
It's hard to imagine.
But let's talk about that new theory you brought up.
Yeah, the science behind it all.
For centuries, people just accepted that the Pythia's trances were, divine intervention, messages from the gods.
Right, it was a given.
So what changed in the 20th century? What made people start to question that?
Well, the idea that there might be intoxicating gases involved at Delphi had been around for a while.
Okay.
But it was often dismissed, as just folklore.
Right, not real science.
Exactly. But then, in the 1980s and 90s, some geologists made a pretty significant discovery.
Ooh, what did they find?
They found two fault lines, and they intersect right under the Temple of Apollo.
No way, right under the temple.
Yep, right underneath.
So she was literally standing on a seismic hotspot.
You could say that. These are the Delphi Fault and the Kerna Fault.
Okay.
And they're actually connected to the geological activity that created the Gulf of Corinth.
Wow, so they weren't just some random cracks in the ground.
No, they were active, shifting, and they were releasing gases.
What kind of gases?
Hydrocarbon gases, things like methane and ethane.
Okay.
But the most important one, in this case, was ethylene.
Ethylene, isn't that what they use to ripen fruit?
That's right. But ethylene can also act as an intoxicant.
So you're saying the Pythia might have been, high.
That's the theory. And remember those springs we talked about, the Castalian spring and the Kerna spring?
Yeah, the ones the Pythia bathed in and the water flowed beneath the temple.
Right. Well, geologists think those gases released by the faults would have dissolved into the spring water. And then as that water flowed beneath the temple, especially into that enclosed space of the Adyton, the gases would have been released into the air.
So instead of breathing in some mystical divine vapor, she was inhaling ethylene gas.
It's a possibility. And there's another clue. Plutarch described the pneuma, that vapor, as having a sweet smell.
Sweet. Like perfume.
Exactly. And guess what? Of all those gases we talked about, only ethylene has a sweet smell.
Huh. That's pretty convincing.
And this isn't just speculation. Back in the early 20th century, they actually studied ethylene as an anesthetic.
Really?
Yep, and they found that in low concentrations, it can cause some interesting effects. Trance-like states, altered speech patterns, even amnesia.
So the Pythia's pronouncements, her weird voice, maybe even those moments when she seemed totally detached from reality.
All potentially caused by ethylene. It's possible.
Yeah.
And don't forget, ancient sources describe two kinds of trances.
Oh, right. One where she was kind of semi-conscious and answering questions in this strange voice.
Right. And then the other one, a much more intense frenzied delirium.
Where she'd move erratically and make these incoherent cries.
Exactly. And sometimes, according to Plutarch, these episodes were so intense they could even be fatal.
Wow, that's dark.
Yeah, it is.
And wasn't there a toxicologist who connected both types of those trances to the effects of inhaling hydrocarbon gases?
You're thinking of Henry Spiller. And what's really interesting is that he linked the frenzied delirium to what we now call a bad trip, a phenomenon associated with ethylene intoxication.
A bad trip, huh?
Oh.
So maybe the mystery of the Oracle isn't so mysterious after all.
Well, even if science can explain how the Pythia's trances worked, it doesn't diminish the impact she had.
That's a good point.
Right. People back then truly believed they were communicating with the divine.
Yeah, and regardless of how she got those prophecies, they shaped history.
Exactly. They made decisions, waged wars, built cities, all based on what she said.
And it's a fascinating example of how science and faith, history and geology, they all intertwine.
They do. It gives us this much richer understanding of the past.
Speaking of which, I remember reading that by Plutarch's time, the oracle's influence had started to decline.
Yeah, it's true.
Plutarch even lamented that the Pythia's trances weren't as frequent or as intense, and he blamed it on a decrease in the flow of pneuma.
It seems like they recognized, even back then, that there was a connection between the geology of the place and the oracle's power.
But they didn't have the scientific knowledge to fully explain it.
Exactly.
So now we have this potential scientific explanation.
Right.
But kings and emperors still went to Delphi for advice. Wars were started. Empires were built, all based on your prophecies.
That's true.
How do we reconcile that with the fact that she might have been, well, intoxicated?
That's the question, isn't it?
Does knowing about the ethylene change how we see her?
Right. Does it make everyone who went to Delphi seem naive?
Or does it just make the story more complex? Like, even in a world where the supernatural seems to rule, there are still natural forces at work.
I think it's the latter.
And that brings up another interesting thought. How much of what we attribute to the supernatural actually has a natural explanation?
We just haven't discovered it yet.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does.
But before we go down that rabbit hole, let's recap what we've learned about the Oracle.
Okay.
We started with this mythical figure shrouded in mystery.
She's been a puzzle for centuries.
But by looking at these articles, we've uncovered a story that's as much about geology and chemistry as it is about faith and prophecy.
It's fascinating how all these pieces fit together.
We saw how Delphi's location, both its geography and its political neutrality, made it so important.
A real crossroads of the ancient world.
We learned about the rituals surrounding the Pythia, the mystery, and the exclusivity of it all.
And we explored the scientific evidence that might explain her powers.
And the big takeaway, even with this new scientific knowledge, the story of the Oracle of Delphi is still captivating.
It's a story that keeps evolving.
It reminds us that the past is rarely simple or clear-cut. It's a blend of myth and reality, faith and science.
And it's up to us to keep piecing it all together.
Absolutely.
And who knows what other mysteries are waiting to be uncovered? What other seemingly impossible events might one day be explained by science?
It makes you want to keep digging, keep researching, keep asking questions.
Well, there's so many ways to keep exploring if you're curious.
Yeah, where do we go from here?
Well, you could dive into the specific prophecies, see who consulted the oracle and how their lives or even history itself were affected.
Oh, like that wooden wall prophecy from the Persian Wars.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example.
It'd be fascinating to see how people interpreted it at the time,
Yeah.
given the historical context and how it ultimately shaped the war.
It's a really pivotal moment.
Totally. Or we could learn more about those Pythian games held at Delphi.
Oh, those were huge.
Wow, held every 4 years in honor of Apollo.
More than just athletics, though.
Right, there's music, poetry, people came from all over Greece.
A major cultural event.
I can imagine the energy, the crowds, the competition.
It must have been quite a spectacle.
I'd love to know more about the rituals and ceremonies, what events they had, what it meant to win.
It was a very prestigious honor.
Definitely. And of course, we could keep digging into the science behind it all.
Yeah, there's still so much to uncover.
Like, what was the exact mix of gases coming from those faults?
Right, and did the effects on the Pythia change over time?
And did the gases really decrease, like Plutarch thought, or was something else going on?
So many questions.
That's what makes this all so fascinating.
The mystery.
This whole deep dive has been a reminder that history isn't set in stone.
It's fluid.
It's constantly changing based on new discoveries, new interpretations.
Your perspective.
And as we keep learning and exploring, who knows what other mysteries will unravel?
What else might be explained by science that seems impossible now?
It's really exciting to think about.
It is.
So we started with a mythical figure, shrouded in mystery.
The Oracle of Delphi.
But through these articles, we've uncovered a story that's just as much about geology and chemistry as it is about faith and prophecy.
A blend of so many things.
We saw how Delphi's location, both geographically and politically, helped it rise to prominence.
It was truly unique.
We delved into the rituals, the mystery, the power of the Pythia.
And the science that might explain it all.
And even with this new understanding, the Oracle of Delphi remains a captivating figure.
Absolutely.
Her story reminds us that the past is rarely simple.
Lots of layers.
It's a mix of myth and reality, faith and science, and it's up to us to keep exploring those connections.
To keep asking questions.
Exactly. So to our listener, keep digging, keep researching, keep that curiosity alive.
That's what makes these deep dives possible.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to ancient Greece, and until next time, keep seeking those aha moments.
See you next time.